If you follow the Story Behind on Instagram, you may have seen our weekend adventure with the family to the factory where today's sugary sweet topic is made. We looked at the old uniforms ladies used to wear to dispense the candy, which is funny because the candy already comes in a plastic dispenser to begin with. Find out the history of this almost 100-year-old treat, including the Outlaw in the 90s, who made a black market for the dispensers. And by the way, there will be details at the end of the show for how you can enter to win a giveaway of today's topics. I'm your host, Emily Prokop, and this is the story behind Pez. In the movie E.T. the Extraterrestrial, Elliot explains to E.T. what Pez is and how it works. And if you were from another planet and didn't know what candy was, how jarring would it be to see it come out of a plastic head? But Pez has become a part of classic Americana, including charting at number 28 on Time's list of the all-time 100 greatest toys back in 2011. But way before all of that, a doctor named Edward Haas invented a new type of baking powder that could be used to make lighter cakes. When his grandson, Edward Haas III, successfully mixed baking powder according to the recipe of his grandfather, he decided to sell it in his father's store. If you haven't guessed, his father's name was Edward Haas II. He is even credited with mixing pre-measured dry cake ingredients together to make and sell the first ready-made cake mix. This encouraged him to go into the confectionery business. He used peppermint oil to create a very strong, cold-pressed peppermint candy, which was originally in the shape of a circle and was packaged in tins, kind of like today's Altoids. The name he chose was Pez, which is a shortened version of the German word Pfefferminz, meaning peppermint. The PEZ were the first, middle, and last letter of the word. Following World War II, smoking had become a popular habit, but Haas wasn't a fan and decided that he would market Pez to people as a way to help them quit. The slogan was, "Smoking prohibited, Pezzing allowed." Did you notice I didn't really touch on probably the number one feature that makes Pez so appealing yet? When Haas was still marketing to people trying to quit cigarettes in 1947, he had the idea to switch from packaging his mints in a tin to finding a more sanitary way to distribute the mints. He was known for being a bit of a germaphobe. He hired Oskar Uxa to create a Pez box and patented what was known as a pocket article dispensing container, which was formed in the shape of a lighter. Pez was even marketed using pinup-style illustrations of women wearing super short dresses, which you may have seen on display on the Story Behind's Instagram feed. When Pez came over to the US, Americans weren't that interested in quitting cigarettes. In fact, cigarette companies were starting to use menthol, marketing it as a smoother way for those with sore throats to enjoy their habit. So Haas's idea of mints as a cigarette replacement didn't get much traction. So Pez switched its marketing to target children, using fruity flavors instead of mint, and creating Pez dispensers with popular cartoon and pop culture characters on top. The first two Pez dispensers were of a Santa Claus and a space trooper, and now come in a variety of popular characters including Tweety Bird that was part of the plot of an episode of Seinfeld aptly named the Pez Dispenser, in which Elaine sees Jerry's Tweety Bird Pez dispenser and has a laughing fit in the middle of George's girlfriend's piano recital. But one thing to note, Pez does not make custom Pez dispensers. Even a Kim Kardashian design was denied. This part of Pez's history takes a weird, almost dark turn. It's the story of a man named Stephen Glue, self-titled PEZ Outlaw. It sounds kooky, right? But we all probably know people with an interesting collection, and the baby boomers who bought and loved Pez dispensers as kids grew up, and some of them became collectors of them, including Stephen Glue. When he quit drugs and alcohol, he needed a new compulsion, and he turned to collecting Pez dispensers when he found out Canada received different characters than the ones he was able to get in Michigan. He began making trips to get boxes of them and selling them to Pez dispenser collectors in the U.S. This provided income for his otherwise poor family. Scott McWhinney, who called himself the president of the U.S. Pez Corporation and ran the Orange, Connecticut headquarters I visited, found out about Glue's collections for sale and worried his employees were stealing the products and selling them, or that collectors were dumpster diving in the headquarters, so he had the garbage bins chained up. But Glue kept growing his collection, including going to a toy convention and being shown a limited edition Silver Glow Pez dispenser, and insisted the woman selling it tell him exactly where she got it, so he could get even more dispensers. Her answer was a factory in Slovenia. Glue, who never flew before in his life, took his college-age son Joshua with him. They met a factory worker who was known as an eccentric when it came to his job to design Pez dispensers, and his designs were often rejected. But Glue and his son gladly paid the man for the rejects, and a few weeks later, went to Pez headquarters in Hungary and made a deal with the manager in exchange for even more rare Pez dispensers. This continued for a few years, even putting them in danger in war zones and seedy areas. He made a black market for Pez dispensers, spending more than $100,000 in bribes. McWhinney was furious, demanding to know where these Pez dispensers on the black market were coming from. Many designs Pez never approved. McWhinney declared that Pez factories must destroy all the molds used to make dispensers once they were finished with them. But Glue was able to find a wholesale toy broker who handled Pez orders for Japan, who would make any design Glue wanted. Glue spent all the money they had to order supplies for weird and bizarre Pez dispensers no one had ever seen before. Orange snowmen, yellow witches, black skeletons, neon colors, glow-in-the-dark ghosts, and a lot of really bizarre Santas. It took 2 days to unload the truck of Pez dispensers into Glue's barn, and it seemed worth it when Glue went to a Pez convention in Cleveland. Collectors went nuts for them. But McWhinney wasn't having it. He made a statement that Glue's collection was fake, and collectors lost interest. Then one morning, Glue opened his computer, loaded PEZ.com, only to see a new button that said, Misfit Dispensers, and freaked out. Pez not only used his designs and copied them, but began selling them with the advertising gimmick of, oops, someone put the wrong colors into the Pez dispenser machine. We need to find loving homes for these poor misfit dispensers, or they will end up in the grinder. Glue furiously contacted his broker, who in turn replied with a fax that said, the right hand knows what the left hand is doing. Even when Glue reduced his price from $25 to $15, Pez dropped their price to $4.95. Glue lost everything. His money, his employees he and his son had working for them, and couldn't unload all the boxes of Pez dispensers that were still in his barn. He buried a bunch and burned the remainders. Glue is still around. He collects rare and vintage cereal boxes now, and still sells them, along with Pez dispensers on eBay. He even sells some from his own collection with his PEZ Outlaw signature on them. A few years back, he put the movie rights to his life story on eBay, but there were no takers. He even wrote a scathing post to Pez on Facebook in 2012, saying he was going to write about them in an unfavorable manner in his book, The PEZ Outlaw Diary, which has since been rewritten into something of a movie script, and I read a little bit of it over on Glue's blog, pezoutlaw.blogspot.com, and for those who know The Office, it definitely has a threat-level midnight vibe to it. By the way, back in 2015, there were talks of a Pez animated movie. A script was written and press releases were given to major media outlets, but nothing has come of it since. I'm totally crossing my fingers, though, that Glue's account goes to Hollywood, though. Information for this episode was sourced from Pez.com, CNN Money, and Playboy. Yep, that Playboy. That's where an incredibly detailed account of Stephen Glue came from, and it's really a fascinating article, which can be found in the show notes at thestorybehindpodcast.com. Want to enter a giveaway for a Pez prize pack? Join me and other trivia buffs in the Story Behind discussion group on Facebook, and there will be a link in the show notes to take you there. This episode was brought to you by the Story Behind executive producers who support the show through the Patreon page at patreon.com/thestorybehind. Thanks for listening.